Morning, everybody.
Hello.
So John tells me he forgot my name.
Oh, that's nice. That's a good way to start.
Great way to start the morning, right?
I told Mmusi Maimane a moment ago that I saw a really good cap on the internet this morning.
Yeah.
This will go down very well with a half of the audience and very badly with another half of the audience. Like Donald Trump's "Make America Great Again" cap, this one said, make Israel Palestine again. And I don't know whether I completely, yeah. I don't know if anybody's watching the American elections, but we'll have our excitement later this year too.
Very soon, absolutely.
We're here to interview, obviously, some of the most important people in this country, some of the people who we will be deciding the future in the country, future of the country in the hands of, which is a poorly constructed sentence, but a good way of putting it in cloudy terms, in the next couple of months. And to help you figure out your way around these complicated discussions, we've decided we would get the leaders of parties. So you've just seen, obviously, the Treasurer General of the ANC.
Yeah.
Later on, you'll see the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF. And now, the leader of the biggest opposition party in the country.
The Democratic Alliance. I wanted to find an interesting way, because, you know, you read out the biographies when you're introducing people, and it's, this is where they studied, this is what they do, this is how many cats they have, and so on. So I went and found to look for some articles, and I found one from 2014. And it's interesting to see how things change in just a couple of years. So this is what one writer a couple of years ago said about Mmusi Maimane, and I quote, "Mmusi Maimane may be one of the most hated figures in local politics. His contemporaries think he's a sellout, his political foes regard him as a yes man, and many among the rest of the black majority consider him skeptically." It is now 2016, and I don't have to tell you how things have changed. As you know, he was elected the federal leader of the Democratic Alliance in May of 2015, and he now also heads up that party in the National Assembly. Please welcome Mmusi Maimane.
Good.
I'll just go straight there. Thank you. Hey, sanbonan dumelang goeiemôre molweni. It's good to see everybody, at least the people I can see, who are probably in the more expensive seats here in the front and the ones in the cheap seats at the back. I'm sorry I can't see you. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a great opportunity for me to be able to speak to you today, and it's great for Daily Maverick to be able to put together an event that we have here today. So to fellow South Africans at home, to guest studios in the audience, and those who are following this discussion on television, on radio, and dumelang. I'd firstly like to thank the Daily Maverick for being able to put together such an event, because I think it's important that as a society and as a country we're able to debate and engage on issues that are facing our country in a mature and a respectful manner. And I think it's quite ironic that we have to travel so far from the hollowed halls of Parliament to find some decorum in our discourse. And I hope we'll be able to achieve that to a large extent today. I think public debates such as this one are crucial for our democratic process. And may long this tradition of the gathering continue, as many more South Africans eagerly await to hear our discourse and certainly where South Africa needs to go. I want to celebrate the work that the Daily Maverick does, because it's media outlets like the Daily Maverick who continue to do an important job without fear or, in fact, favor. It's in fact in times such as this one, where there's news censorship, that the public broadcasters' banning of political TV adverts and refusing to show anti-government protests, it's crucial that the remaining independent media outlets paint the real picture. So, bagaetso, fellow South Africans, as we head towards the local government elections in August, it is in fact clear that our democracy is maturing. And by this, I don't only just mean our political discourse, I mean the way our voters are beginning to align themselves. The spread of votes between smaller parties has become almost negligible, leaving only 3 contenders, and represented by the first 3 speakers, at the gathering, and that, I think, is a sign of a maturing democracy. I say it's represented by the first three speakers, but of course that ignores the very obvious question. Where is Jacob? Julius Malema and I are both leaders of our respective parties, but it is quite telling that the leader of the governing party is certainly not here. And I think the President Zuma, is quite a busy man, so I can appreciate that he couldn't be here today, because ultimately, when you are trying to shop for a jet, appear in court, line up lucrative Russian deals, keep a long-distance relationship in Dubai, you simply don't have time to run a country. You just can't. I think it'd be important. I think it'd be important for South Africans to hear from him. I think we deserve better leadership than what he's providing. And I think we deserve accountability, and he should be here to defend his party's record. Because ultimately, at these elections, the question must always be, will he provide answers to the difficult questions that South Africans are putting before us? And I think we must get on. Because actually, the question that is before all of us as South Africans is which political party can be trusted with our economy? Which political party can be trusted to safeguard our institutions of our democracy? And ultimately, which political party can build an economically prosperous and inclusive South Africa? In 55 days from now, we will put our democracy to the test. And I say this because we've had plenty of successful elections in the past, but none of them have come to test our democracy such as the one that we see now. It's the kind of test that says, will the governing party lose its grip on power? Before that, perhaps the test wasn't put to them. But now we find ourselves at that point today. And it's crucial that our democracy passes that particular test. Because we need to know that governments can change hands without violence, without intimidation, and ultimately without electoral fraud. And we need to treasure our democracy because even though it's not perfect, it is, as South Africans, our miracle. And as someone once said, that the ballot is more powerful than the bullet. We're at a time in our history where all South Africans, including those sharing the stage with me today and later on today, should remember these words. That we've lived through the bullet for 400 years. It was the threat of a bullet that sustained colonialism and apartheid. We should, ladies and gentlemen, never ever go back there. Because instead, we must embrace democracy, however imperfect it may be, and we must work towards building our democratic institutions. More importantly, I think we must affect the change through the ballot, as we did in 1994, because ultimately this is what elections are about. Those who talk about taking power through the barrel of a gun really do not understand the struggle of what democracy was about. And they should in fact be selling their sights on winning elections rather than resorting to mindless threats of violence. And the good news is that 26.3 million South Africans have registered to vote in these upcoming local government elections. This is an increase of 11.3% over the 2011. This is indeed a sign that our democracy and our people are getting ready to use the power of the ballot to effect change. And more than 1 million of these voters will be making their ballot for the first time. And I'm excited about this because if we've learned one thing in the last year, is that young South Africans refuse to be taken for granted. It's young people who have made it clear that they will not tolerate this government and that this government has failed to keep its word. These first-time voters represent a generation with little to lose but everything to gain. It's a generation of which almost 2/3 of these South Africans cannot find work. They've stepped out of a failed education system and a stalled economy. They are frustrated, they are impatient, and if anyone chooses not to listen to them or fails to take them seriously, they are indeed making a massive mistake. These are young people who may have been labeled born frees, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, many of them have never tasted the real fruit of freedom. And this is because we've inherited a deeply unjust society. And through no fault of their own, Millions of young South Africans, particularly black South Africans, have had to contend with a daily reality in which apartheid legacy still governs just about every aspect of their lives. They watched as their parents waited patiently for economic freedom that was meant to follow their political freedom. And for 22 years, their parents waited, and most of them are no closer to achieving this dream today than they were back in 1994. This generation will not wait 22 years of freedom. They will not wait for someone to deliver it to them. They will stand up and take it for themselves. And at least in the next 2 months, in 2 months' time, they will have the right and the opportunity to do so. Which brings me to the choice that faces them and faces every single one of us. On one side, you would have heard the ANC story, the party of their parents, the party that was meant to deliver a better life for all, but instead has delivered a better life for Jacob Zuma's cattle, but has today been reduced, in fact, to a shady network of patronage and corruption. Instead of staying the course and completing the transition from a liberation movement to a capable party of government, their leadership chose to abuse their power and steal from the people of this country. The party has betrayed its values and it's betrayed its voters. And I want to say this up front, that it's not Jacob Zuma, it's not a Jacob Zuma problem. It is, in fact, an ANC problem. The party is corrupt to the core, and its sole job is to defend Jacob Zuma. And the ANC has shown over and over again that it cannot change from within. In fact, I feel sorry for Dr. Mkhize were to come here, because clearly, Cyril Ramaphosa wouldn't come here and defend JZ, so they had to go through the list and send Dr. Mkhize. I bet you if this event was next week, we would end up having Des van Rooyen here because you're running out of people. It is sadly what I call blind loyalty. In fact, it reminds me of another person who also said they would defend Zuma blindly. In fact, they went as far as saying they would kill for Zuma. They proudly today pronounced that they would take power in South Africa through the barrel of a gun. I am a Sowetan. I've watched violence. And I can remember the violence of the 80s and the 90s. I remember what Wipatong meant. I remember what Sharpeville meant. I battle to understand what's happening in KZN today because we're seeing violence. So why would Julius promise South Africans more violence? Why are we promising the bullet, not the ballot? Perhaps maybe deep down inside it'd be better to focus on telling people what we offer rather than have them fight for violence and that they can reject your policies at the polls. The reality is that government exists in a different universe. It's a make-believe world that the EFF has been selling. It's a gap between as wide as the Karoo sky and wide the pledge to our voters of economic policies they can never deliver. Anyone who makes the promises of free houses with many rooms, high-paying jobs, and self-sufficient municipalities with food and services for all, I think others correctly titled it everything for free. There's simply no way these can be delivered. On Wednesday, Stat SA announced that our GDP had contracted by 1.2% in the first quarter of 2016. This spells a disaster for the 8.9 million unemployed South Africans who will battle to find work. They've been failed by the ANC government at national level, and they've been failed by the ANC where it governs in towns and cities across the country. But I want you to know it will be a picnic compared to what would happen if the EFF took place. Make no mistake, wherever ruins await our economy under the ANC will accelerate tenfold under the EFF. I mean, to get an idea of what this would look like, I think we don't need to look far. Venezuela was a thriving modern democracy until Hugo Chavez, a self-proclaimed champion of the poor, much like our friend Julius Malema here, sold them this utopian vision. The result was the most spectacular economic implosion you'll ever see in that country outside of a war situation. Every public service has collapsed. Inflation sits now at triple digits. 70% of the population lives in poverty. Infant death and mortality rates are skyrocketing, and violence and looting are on the rise every single day. I think Chavez's experiment is central to economic control, has ruined the once flourishing economy. So if the EFF ever does take power through the barrel of the gun, this is what we can look forward to. And I don't think we can look far. We can ask Zimbabweans who fled Zimbabwe what the prospect of economic policies that are promulgated by the EFF have delivered. I suspect none of us want to see millions who face poverty and hunger. The Zimbabwean economy today is half the size it was 15 years ago when Mugabe started his land grabs. The collapse of Zimbabwe is the very accurate blueprint of what the manifesto of the EFF delivers. I think South Africans need to know this. They need to know that they recognize the same things in Mugabe as they should see in the EFF. They also know that taking power through the barrel of the gun, they must expect and be prepared to accept living under the barrel of the gun. So South Africans don't want a country that is built on violence and a threat. They will reject this through the ballot box. Honorable members, friends, fellow South Africans, our change will come through the ballot, not the bullet. Change that is crucial. South Africa has been here before, where business confidence was low, where our economy was struggling. We chose democracy. We today face the threat of a downgrade. It is crucial and it is essential that we face change. And I believe that there is only one party that can turn our cities into hubs of economic growth, even in spite of a failing ANC's national government. We must, fellow South Africans, treat our entrepreneurs as heroes of the new struggle for economic freedom. We can, in fact, turn our cities into hubs of economic growth. We recognize as a party that businesses, large and small, and not government, in fact, that's what creates jobs. We need to encourage investment in our cities so that jobs can be created. This does mean that we must cut red tape and we must support emerging entrepreneurs. It means we must invest in the kind of infrastructure that facilitates growth, that includes building integrated public transport systems, rolling out broadband, and upgrading water and sanitation infrastructure. And we know that waste and corruption are the enemies of growth and jobs. The cleaner the local government, the better the chances of attracting investment and retaining investors. These things are the basics of what any decent, good local government must do. And most of the battle is won doing the very basic things. This is why only one party here in the debate can make promises to voters of a better life and back these promises with a proven track record in government. And when I say a proven track record, it's not us saying it. I mean it's been verified by independent reports and data on issues ranging from employment and service delivery to clean governance. Just look at the recent independent organization Good Governance Africa report, which found that in fact out of the 10 best cities in South Africa, almost nine out of 10 of them are run by the DA. If you took the same stat and you looked at the 10 West, I think it's fair for you to conclude which party is running that. It's quite an exceptional achievement when you consider the fact that we currently govern 26 out of more than the 200 municipalities in South Africa. When we look at unemployment as an example, the greatest challenge we face today, according to the latest quarterly labor force survey by Stats SA, the Western Cape's unemployment rate is 23%. That's the expanded unemployment rate, which includes almost those who want to work but have given up looking. The national expanded unemployment rate is 36.6%. The differential is almost 11.3%. It proves which government, in fact, can deliver jobs. In Gauteng, right here, the DA-run municipality of Midvaal has an expanded unemployment rate of 18.8%. Whilst other Gauteng municipalities, this ranges from 24% to 35%. The message is clear. Where the DA governs, jobs are created. In fact, where the DA governs, people have the highest access to basic services and particularly the free portion of those services. The Stats SA household survey census released this week confirmed that when it found that over 98% of poor households in the Western Cape have access to a basket of free services. that is more than 50% better than the average in South Africa as a whole. And the strongest proof is that the DA is improving the lives of South Africans, particularly in poor communities. The reason why the DA is successful in delivering services, because it runs a clean and a more efficient operation. The DA does not tolerate corruption and waste. And this translates into direct benefits for communities. If you want a clear indication of this, in fact, of levels of corruption in government, then you looked at the unauthorized, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. In the ANC-run metros of Joburg, Tshwane, and Nelson Mandela Bay, this figure sits at 2.2 billion in 2014-2015. In the DA-run city of Cape Town, that figure sits at 0. 21 of the 26 DA-run municipalities received totally clean audits, unqualified audits without findings. Fellow South Africans, I think the facts speak for themselves. Poor South Africans are better off where the DA governs. And of course, we have not achieved everything where we govern. It is a work in progress, and I keep calling on our governments to do more. But I believe we're moving in the right direction. That's why more and more South Africans are choosing the DA. It's where people like me, who once maybe voted for the ANC, are making a different choice. And the people are seeing through the ANC's racial propaganda. Every time the ANC plays its race card, it loses more credibility. Because people out there know the truth. They know that we're working hard to bring the DA to new communities across South Africa, to engage with people and give them insight into what our party really stands for. And I want to say this to you, it is indeed paying off. Because we're seeing membership growth and activism grow in black communities that has barely been seen by the DA in the last decade. In fact, for the first time, the DA has a candidate in every ward in South Africa. And the vast majority of these candidates are in fact black. Our support is growing in every single province, and particularly in our metro. I believe, ladies and gentlemen, that the DA is in fact the future of this country. It is the hope South Africans are looking for, and it is the change that South Africa must bring to build a South Africa for all. And in fact, unlike our opponents represented here, both parties thrive on stoking fires of racial divisions. And I'm proud to say that DA is a home for all South Africans, black, white, Indian, or colored. We're proud to represent white South Africans and proud to represent black South Africans. We're proud to represent young, old, straight, gay, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish South Africans. And we're the only party that can genuinely and honestly say this. Our diversity is our strength. And so while others divide, we will unite. While others threaten violence, we'll offer peace. And while others fail, we will be there to get our country working again. We're positive because we believe in the power of people to effect change. We're positive because people are in fact rejecting failed policies and the break-in promises of the ANC. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we're positive because people are beginning to make a different choice. And they are choosing the power of the ballot rather than that of a bullet. So I say, we are the hope, and South Africa would do well to be in the hands of the Democratic Alliance. Ke a leboga. Thank you very much.